Welcome to the 129th season of the Canadian Club Toronto, Canada's podium. For over a century, this stage has united visionaries and leaders from politics, business, community, and the arts to share insights on the most pressing issues of our time. And with Canada in a pivotal moment, it's more important than ever that we come together.
We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record.
Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon again, everyone, and a warm welcome to those joining us online. My name is Shazan Chu, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and your host. Today's conversation could not be timelier. As countries around the world rethink food security, supply resilience, and sustainable growth, Canada has an extraordinary opportunity to position itself as a global leader in agriculture and food innovation. Our ability to host these important conversations is made possible through the generous support of our partners and sponsors. Today's event is proudly sponsored by the Arel Foundation and Deloitte. Thank you for your support and partnership. To our season sponsors, Canadian Bankers Association and the Ontario Regional Council of Carpenters, and to our official airline sponsor, Air Canada, thank you. And to Canada's Forest Trust, our nature partner, who help us reduce our carbon footprint by planting a smart forest in our honor, thank you as well. We're also pleased to welcome students joining us today from Toronto Metropolitan University's Ted Rogers School of Management and York University's School of Public Policy and Administration. We're glad to have future leaders with us for today's conversation. And now let me take a moment to remind you of our website and its on-demand content. Please visit canadianclub.org, and while you're there, consider becoming a member if you aren't already. And we also appreciate it when you post about our events on your social media platform of choice to continue the conversation. And now I'm sure you'll have questions about Canada's future in food and agriculture, innovation and global competitiveness. So please use the question cards that are on your tables. And for those joining us online, please use the submit a question button on the right side of your screen. Our team will look out for them and share them with our moderator today. And now it is my pleasure to invite Laura Arel, Managing Director, the Arel Family Foundation, to formally introduce today's speakers and moderator.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am Laura Arel, as mentioned. I just wanted to highlight at the Arel Family Foundation, our mission is to improve human and planetary health through food. This is a lever we believe in. The work we do provides support across grassroots, institutional, and policy scales, and through the Arel Food Institute at the University of Guelph. And we hope sets the stage for collaborations and policy change that Canada urgently needs. Never has this work felt more critical for Canada. With rising food prices, geopolitical turmoil, a relative underinvestment in innovation, and a GDP which has now declined for the last 3 of 4 quarters. The Errol Family Foundation is proud to sponsor today's Canadian Club event to highlight the massive opportunity at hand for Canada to invest in food and agriculture. Agriculture and food have always been key sectors for the Canadian economy. Yet, in today's world, we are woefully underperforming. As Prime Minister Carney said earlier this year, a country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. Carney highlighted agriculture as a key pillar of Canadian economic sovereignty, which will ensure our food security and, importantly, also mitigate climate change. Canada's blessed with more arable land than anywhere else in the world. We have 30% of the world's fresh water. Investing in and protecting these assets will only get more crucial as climate change intensifies. We need to use those resources wisely to create jobs and prosperity in ways that also mitigate climate change and support national food security. Last week, the BDC said, economic sovereignty isn't only built at the seed stage. It's built when companies scale, endure, and lead globally from Canada. The window to act is narrowing, and the cost of inaction is growing. Having that focus, economic sovereignty, developing local supply chains, increasing our GDP, and strengthening our domestic and foreign trade is not bad for business. It is what will set Canada apart. Canada should and can be a global food superpower, but that can only happen if we understand the challenges and opportunities, and most importantly, make the crucial investments needed in them. It is my pleasure to sponsor today's event and to introduce today's panel, an esteemed group advocating for researching and investing in food innovation in Canada. Justine Hendricks is the President and CEO of Farm Credit Canada. Alison Sundstrom is Managing Partner of Naya Ventures, a venture capital fund investing in deep tech in food and agriculture. And Evan Fraser is Director of the Errol Food Institute at University of Guelph. We're going to start by watching an exciting video as the speakers come to the stage. Thank you.
Food security is a basic building block of civil society in the world. And I think that that's the importance of Canada. The world needs a little more Canada, and agriculture is kind of the driver of that.
Partir une ferme de canneberge, c'est un beau projet. Les gens ont besoin d'être confortés, rassurés sur ce qu'ils mangent, ce qu'ils consomment. On exporte le savoir-faire partout dans le monde. Ça part de nos valeurs. L'agriculture canadienne, c'est clair que c'est un bel atout pour le Canada, mais il faut valoriser nos produits.
Local for us is everything. That's what we do. If you don't support what's in your community, you lose it. We go above and beyond to try and support our local farmers, our local fisher peoples, pretty much anything that we can do here in town that, keeps us together as a community and supports the people in it.
One of the things that I like about the lobster industry is that it's a super highly regulated industry, meaning it's really respectful to the environment and to the ocean in terms of sustainability. Because I don't think it is good to be super efficient at catching things. You need to leave some behind, It's about respect for the ocean. It's about respect for Mother Nature.
When it comes to land and agriculture, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit have so much to share and teach. We're very animate in what we do. We're very emotional in our connection when it comes to things. And one of the things that we teach is it's about food sovereignty. It's about not wanting too much of something, because when you do that, you nurture something for 7 generations ahead.
Canada has the abundance of land and water. Those are the 2 scarcest resources in the world. And if we look at climate change, Canada is globally important to food security.
we played so humble for so long, we've done ourselves a massive disservice. Like, I gotta go out in the street right now and be like, what's Canadian food? And watch people stare up and look for an answer. They don't have one. We have incredible food. We are the envy of literally every other country on the planet. From our ability to source from our oceans, to grow, like, we're it.
Restons ensemble, parce qu'ensemble, on va être beaucoup plus fort pour faire face à ce qu'on a. On a plein de belles cartes à jouer au Canada, puis ces cartes-là, on va les jouer si on reste unis.
We have to coexist in this. We need each other.
And we walk through this kitchen, there's 17 countries represented here. We're one of those people who's Canadian. 17 countries. Being one of the most welcoming places on the planet has really big benefits. It's our ability to have the best products in the world, to have a really good place and operate to do safe business.
Is a massive opportunity for Canada, an opportunity to serve a customer of the future that we don't serve today, an opportunity to value add to our agriculture and create wealth in communities across this country in a new, strong global Canadian economy.
Good video.
I know. I get the pleasure of watching this, I think, every morning to pump me up before I go to work. So I hope it was inspirational to folks in the room and online, because it couldn't be a better picture of showing the potential of Canada.
I love it. So before we start talking about the future,
yes.
I want to just set a quick historic context. I've been doing a lot of really depressing reading about history lately. 1845, a rainy year, hit Ireland, created ideal conditions for the failure of the potato crop. Quarter of the population died or lost their homes. But what's interesting is 20 years earlier, the same problem hit Ireland, and it didn't cause a famine. And there's all these paired comparisons of moments when bad weather triggers bad things. Ethiopia, early 1980s. The drought that triggered the Ethiopian famine is minor meteorologically, yet caused millions of lives to be lost. 1992, a massive drought hit southern Africa. Nobody died. They adapted. And the link there, the key there, is the governance innovations, the social innovations, the technological innovations. So we're obviously right now, folks, facing this massive problem. We face another sort of analogous catastrophe on our own hands, the Strait of Hormuz, the US drought that's happening right now. And yet we have this sense of optimism here that Canada can not only be more resilient and more secure ourselves, but also export our resilience, export our security, and make money doing it. So Justine, you've talked about this as a generational opportunity.
Yeah.
I really want you to unpack the generational opportunity for us, given how gloomy history and the moment of the today feels it.
Well, out of gloom comes bloom. So maybe let me kick off by a statement, and hopefully as you leave this great lunch today, you'll remember it. I want all of you to think about this. The Canadian calorie can lead the Canadian economy. It's the opportunity right now for Canada and the agriculture and food sector to rise as the superhero that the world needs and the world wants. And how can Canada do it? Because Canada's got the care to nourish. We've got the ingenuity to transform through technology, and the creativity to actually lead, because today we need lots of creativity. So what do I mean by that? And you saw in the video, the Canada's ag and food sector represents about $150 billion of our GDP. On its own, it is actually larger than steel, auto, and oil and gas pulled together. It represents about...
Sorry. On its own, ag is bigger.
I didn't say, Evan, don't start a revolution at the Canadian Club. We'd like to get an invitation back one day. It is bigger in terms of the GDP contribution than those three combined. And I'm not here to say that because you're bigger, you're better, and you should get more attention. It's actually, why is it that, given the size, the potential, and the importance, why is it that it's hard to get it on the national scene in terms of discussion. So you asked me about the generational opportunity. When you take a look at Canada's ag and food sector, or ag and food across the world, it is a sector that has the opportunity to solve 4 major problems globally: health, hunger, climate, while being a huge driver of economic growth. Not only can it do it, but it can do all 4 simultaneously. So when you look at the combination of the potential with what it can solve together, that's why I think the 3 of us are so passionate about it. Canada has really had a huge presence around the world, but as the introduction said, there's a lot more potential to go and get, and it requires us to come together to be able to deliver it.
All right, Allison, you leaned in there. Justine said, get the attention that it needs. Why haven't we got there? Do you want to jump in on that point? It looked like you really did.
Yeah, I did. I love speaking with Justine. We've been on a stage together before, and she is so passionate. In that video, I wanted to yell, "Yes, chef," because he said one of the things that we are very humble.
Yeah.
And I think humility is an awesome characteristic, but maybe not when you're growing your economy. And one of the things that I wanted to give you a contrast to, I always tell personal stories, and I'm married to a Dutch engineer. And Holland knows agriculture. Holland is a country of 17 million. We could put the entirety of Holland in the province of Nova Scotia. And their GDP has been growing exponentially. They do much better than us. Their economy has been growing and growing. Our opportunity is so large. We have all the things that they do not have, which is widespread arable land, water, ingenuity. The innovation in Canada is immense. And I come from a founder perspective. I've had 2 successful ag tech companies that I've grown around the world, and I can tell you that our tech community, our agriculture community, our science, we have it all. What we must do is enjoy this opportunity and really take advantage of all of our strengths.
So Evan, before we go back to this is Allison and Justine taking over the conversation. Okay, so I want to add something to your Dutch story. So I had the pleasure of going to the Food Valley in Holland, and we saw Lot's presentation, and it is, if anybody has a chance, it's very much worthwhile to go and see the model. And a lot of what you see in that model is everybody's conscientious decision to focus and to work together very deliberately. And in one of the presentations, and I promise I'll stop after this, Evan, is...
and I don't believe you.
I don't believe you. So they put up a slide, and the starting of the presentation was this. It says, if success to you is going at it alone, you're not thinking big enough.
Exactly.
And that's what I think I got a little inspired by that, so I came back and I said, that's what we have to do. We have to pull together a lot more, and everybody in this room works hard. So it's not about a question of we're not working hard enough. We have to be smarter at it and really coordinate our execution.
So on that,
yes,
we want to grow our economy, we want to develop innovation. We also want to be more sovereign as a nation. And Laura, when you mentioned Mark Carney's speech in Davos about a nation that can't feed itself, can't control itself. So we see this in the last just few months, a coupling of agri-food policy and defense and security policy, which I find really, really interesting. Allison, you and I wrote an op-ed with Lenore Newman in the Toronto Star a month or so ago. We talked about the fact that we have taken food for granted, enjoyed this food dividend, and now we have to make up for this underinvestment in agri-food. So what do you think, maybe Allison, start with you, what do you think about how to bring that defense agenda and that agri-food innovation agenda together into one package?
So my thinking on defense is really about resilience. And I think, as was said, if a country can't feed itself, then it has risk. And countries like Holland remember things like the hunger winter. They remember what it is like to be food insecure. And I think that that's something that maybe we don't quite remember. Maybe we've been so very fortunate. But a country that can defend itself, fuel itself, feed itself, has definitely some resilience. But those of us who actually can feed others have a type of international power and might, which, if we use it well, we can be a very successful nation.
So let's hold on that for a second, because when we were writing that op-ed, you wrote the phrase, we have to stop treating food only as an economic commodity, but also a strategic lever.
Correct. It is definitely, when we have strength in areas like food production, food processing, getting food to market, sophisticated trade mechanisms, we actually have a strength and we will have a power that will grow beyond us. I think that that's something we really have to think about. And the other issue, I have two issues as a founder that I found challenging. One was mentorship. How do I take my company around the world? And the second is access to capital. One of the reasons why I'm so privileged to share this stage with Justine, I've known Farm Credit Canada for many, many years, and I see an excitement. I had loved it at the beginning, and I think it's one of the strengths of the Holland ecosystem. Rabobank, Rabo Ventures became a global footprint of capital, but now we're seeing an actual desire to invest in these industries that are so very important to us. Another strength point on Holland is the triple helix. Mm-hmm. The coordination between capital, the coordination between academia, industry, and government.
Justine, you want to jump in on this national defense issue? What's Farm Credit Canada's role in helping steer this huge, multifaceted ship that we're talking about?
Yes, well, I think our role, I want to build on what Allison said, because in that op-ed too, you talked about, right, that need to invest in processing, and there is huge strategic importance to having the port system, the rail system, and so forth, but everything that's in between is equally important. Think of your cold storage, right? Making sure that the food that you're growing, I'll say in the center across the country, is able to get to those ports. And I think that's what the Dutch do really well, is this coordination of everybody. When they plan, they're all planning around that. But maybe if I may, Evan, I'll talk a little bit more about the capital and how we got to, at Farm Credit Canada, this realization that there was an opportunity for us to do more. So the quick story about FCC is 1959, we were created, very much grew around primary agriculture, financing, through senior secured debt, right? And today we're a book of almost $64 billion, and we're in those top 10 financial institutions in Canada. So think about it. We're a bank that live, eat, and breathe ag and food every day, and we got 64 billion of it. And we don't have the whole market, there's others out there. So we very much, when I started my mandate, I quickly went on the road and crossed this country to try to really understand, like, what's unique within the Canadian ag and food sector, and what are the needs out there. And that's when you really start to see it, that there's opportunities on the processing side. You hear lots about, can somebody tell our story, right? Because we're such a big country. And that's what led us, when we saw the big needs in terms of different forms of capital, where we decided to launch FC Capital. Because we on the senior secured debt side, we're here to stay, we're not going anywhere. But if you want to be best equipped to respond to what the needs are and the opportunities, frankly, if you're going to scale, that's what we needed to do. So that's how we leaned into that. And recently, in February, we've been going around telling our story, and actually one of those pillars that came together that we're super proud of, and I know some of those investors are in the room, so thank you for that, was we created this coalition of 20 investors, institutional, private capital, and they came in and they said, you know what, we can see what that need is and the opportunity. So we're going to pledge that between now and 2030, we're going to invest $5 billion in Canada's ag and food industry. And on top of that, FCC said, well, we're going to put $2 billion. So when you look at it, $7 billion to this sector. This is usually when I say to the crowd, I was hoping I'd get an applause because that's a lot of cash. But I know this is Toronto. I know. I needed to come in tens of billions. I'll do that next time. But if you think about it, it's the largest commitment to ag and food probably in the last 40 years. Yeah. So I want to go back to the introduction. We've got lots of potential. We can offer a lot, but there's still lots we need to do. And part of that is you need that capital.
I wonder if I could dispel a myth.
Go for it, please.
Okay, there is a myth that investing in food and ag does not provide returns.
Yeah.
And I want to dispel that myth. I can do so personally from my own personal experience, but I also want to indicate that food and ag represents a huge growth opportunity. We've seen sort of a period of time where we've had tech being very, very successful. Well, I'm here to tell you that the future is biology. And some of our biggest companies, Colossal Bioscience, I'm invested in such a tiny, tiny piece, but that was our first decacorn last year. And it is solving biological, and essentially what it's doing is solving de-extinction. Yeah. And if you think about it, de-extinction is actually, if you know why something becomes extinct, then maybe you know how you can prevent that. So we're seeing the parameters of biology expanding, and that is what food and agriculture really is biological growth and development. So I think we have to put our heads on a little bit differently because food and ag is an incredible opportunity.
Well, and I think we've looked at some of the numbers, and if you take a look at the last 10 years, actually the Canadian ag and food sector has performed better than the Canadian economy. So for those investors in the room wondering whether or not it's a good investors, it's done exceptionally well. So you're right, Allison. It is very much about putting more emphasis on it, bring it to light, and certainly what we hear and we recognize. When we ask different investors or some of the banks, like, what do you think about ag and food? To be honest, nobody tells us, oh no, we don't think it's an important sector. Nobody says that, especially as they're eating their lunch, right? Nobody says that. But the analogy I would have is, you say, well, where does ag and food fit in your list of priorities? I could ask this room. Probably most of you would tell me, oh, Justine, it's for sure in our top 10, right? But it's not number 10, because you wouldn't dare tell me that, because I'd keep you on the phone for another 45 minutes. But it's probably number 7th or 8th place, right? So what happens when in your top 10 priorities, you're number 7 and 8? June comes around, mid-year, it's crunch time or something that happens and you really have to focus. You do your top 5, you deliver on those and you hit your numbers like that. But number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, oh, let's push them to next year, right? And then you push again to next year. So then when you combine that with the perceived complexity of ag and food, that's contributing to why it's not in those top 5. So I think the three of us, our mission is, we want to get it to 5th place, 3rd place. Why not? I'll say 1st place, but I'll settle for 3rd. Not in hockey, though, to be clear. And but that's what we really want to be able to bring as a change. And I would suggest, certainly from a Farm Credit Canada perspective, because we do it every day, that's where we want to partner. Because recognizing that sometimes there are subtleties and uniqueness to the sector, but there are players out there that can help you demystify so you can invest in confidence.
All right. folks, you're getting a very enthusiastic, upbeat perspective, which was our intention.
Yes.
I'd like to also talk about two tougher issues.
Yeah.
Food insecurity and potential of environmental trade-offs are often positioned as also important, but maybe don't hit the top 10, maybe hit the top 20, maybe hit the top 30. So let's start with food insecurity. We know through StatsCan data that 1 in 4 Canadian households is food insecure. We've got Laurie Nichols and Nick Saul sitting in the audience today who have devoted their lives and their organizations to this issue. And I feel that attention. On one hand, we're talking about economic growth and productivity and growing the economy. And the other hand, we're talking about a terrible tragedy for our country. So, Justine, why don't you start us? Alison, you were leaning in. Sorry.
If I could.
Alison, why don't you jump in on this?
If I could, because this is something we've investigated deeply. Food insecurity is not really all about food production. What food insecurity is about is our ability to deliver food at an equivalent basis to everyone in our country. If we are remaining food insecure, overproduction is not going to help us, but basically we have to be a society that understands this is a risk and we must address it. So I think the conversation we're having here today is not so much about food insecurity, but being able to produce food, do so at a price that makes it equitable for everyone, and be a type of society that can feed people when they're needed. And we do have food insecurity in the north, in different parts of our country. We need to address this, and we need to fix this. Technology might be one source, but it's more human than that.
Well, and I think you're bang on, Alison, and I think what it also speaks to is the whole system or the ecosystem, you know, between those ports and so forth. How do you bring refrigeration across so all the communities are able to access it? You know, Laurie is a pro on this in terms of the waste and what do you do to minimize that waste? And to be clear, it's about maximizing what you can get out of that so that everybody can equally access it. And I think the other element, Evan, that's important in this conversation is when you take a look at where agriculture is performed, right? Agriculture and food, it's not just an urban opportunity, it's a rural opportunity. And I know some people don't like that word, but there is a divide, right, between urban and rural Canada. And we need to start to look at those rural communities and what they contribute. Look at what you just ate right now. Without the success of those communities and how we come together in order to help them be successful, that's what's going to bring prosperity to Canada because all of our communities are thriving. So I think we need to change the debate. It's not, is it one or, it's the two that have to work in sync. You can't be a successful processor if you can't source your inputs. Those inputs often will come from smaller rural communities. And that's probably the piece I would suggest that we've moved away from in the last few years in terms of how we talk about it, of one winning over the other. You need both. And if the two aren't thriving, we're not gonna make it. And there is a ton of productivity that comes out of those communities. And we just all need to do a better job at understanding it and then making sure that we can derive the potential out of it.
Awesome, thank you. Let's talk about the environment then, as the other issue that often is pitted against agriculture or perceived to be pitted against agriculture. I was just at an event up the street earlier this morning for Toronto Climate Week it was discussing how agriculture contributes about 10% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, about 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. For those of you who are around this week, Arrell Food Institutes, we're hosting a part of Toronto Climate Week on Thursday, doing a deep dive into this. And agriculture is positioned as a contributor both to the problem but also potential solution. So, I mean, Justine, do you want to start us off on that? What's FCC doing on that one? And then,
well, no, I'll let, because Alison will say the humbling statement. She's good at that. She's like, what is Justine wanting me to say?
No, I never think like that.
Never think that.
In terms of emissions, my technology focused on reducing livestock emissions, but also on farmer profitability, and that's incredibly important.
So can you just paint us a picture of that technology that you just
Real
breezed
quick,
past?
automated phenotyping method, essentially collecting as much data as possible, linking it to genetic selection, and develop my technology in that way. Essentially, we learned that certain animals were feed efficient, and if you selected for them, you could make a change. It brought along a lot of other changes. And so those are the type of technologies that I'm really interested in. And so I think in terms that although climate, we have methane emissions from animals, we've got forest fires that are all incorporated into our emission footprint. I think that what we need to do is look at, and I'm very excited, I believe that with new technologies, we can actually reduce the environmental footprint at the same time meeting those objectives, as you said earlier. So for me, it's one of the most exciting opportunities to feed people, improve farmer profitability, and also reduce emissions. And it always comes back to innovation, Evan.
So on the innovation piece, I think it's what's one of the aspects, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Allison and Evan, is when we look at it, we say sustainability should not be at the expense of profitability. So when you take a step back and you look at that whole value chain and you look at who's paid a lot for that, it is true the closer you get to the farmer is that often they're the ones that pay the price and don't necessarily get rewarded for their efforts. But now I want to come to innovation, as Allison was saying. I'm going to give you a statistic that I hope gives you a boost of energy to do something about it. We took a look at the correlation between us and the United States in terms of investment in ag tech and food tech. And the ratio, brace yourself, is 23-1, not in our favor. So if you want to drive productivity, you want to find the solutions, right, in terms of helping from a climate point of view, and we all agree in this room that it requires innovation, you need to invest in it because you need those ideas to be able to then scale, commercialize, and then scale. And that's one of the reasons why I think we were really excited about the conversation today, because that, I would say, is an area where we do need to put a bit more focus in terms of that investment in technology and innovation to bring great Canadians' ideas, not just across Canada, but around the world. So there's a direct link around the two, and we haven't necessarily been as strong in terms of putting our dollars where we need to in order to be able to drive that.
So that doesn't mean we're not innovative. And I am the very proud founding partner of Creative Destruction Lab agricultural stream. Creative Destruction Lab came out of University of Toronto in 2012. It's one of our biggest Canadian success stories. Basically delivering format across all of the new up-and-coming technologies, quantum, photonics, you name some things that will change the dial. I'm very, very proud of our research involvement in artificial intelligence. We basically have the godfathers of AI at University of Toronto, University of Alberta, and University of Montreal. Fascinating, but we didn't commercialize it. And that is something that I really want to leave here today, that we've got to start commercializing our research, our science. And one of the very proud things, and I'm so delighted to have Madam Chambers here today, but the University of Guelph, one of the things when I invested in Creative Destruction Lab, I said, we must be global because Canada's agriculture industry to survive must be global. And I'm so very proud that CDL Ag has now become a global stream, but it's also going to launch at the University of Guelph in concert with University of Alberta, University of Calgary in October. and very proud that in October it's going to Doha. So CDL Doha is launching with CDL Berlin and CDL Paris. And why this is so important is that desertification is crossing the world. And if you learn and if you bring your innovators to one of the most challenged nations, then we will really move along. But I just want to say that to University of Guelph, thank you so much for joining us. And it's quite a journey.
We've talked about Mr. Carney a few times.
Yes.
After the famous Davos speech, he made a surprise announcement. It was a few weeks later. And he said, we're going to have a national food security strategy coming up. And it caught me by surprise. I thought I had my finger on the pulse of food policy in Ottawa, but I called people up and I actually got some, that's an interesting thing. So it's going to come out soon. Any wish list? Justine, Allison, what would you like to see in a national food security strategy for Canada?
Well, what I would like to see is, and we've talked about it on this stage, right? So we've talked about thriving communities, whether urban or rural. We've talked about the need to have better coordination and make sure that along the chain, when you put your food lens on it, we consider those infrastructure needs that are in between your ports, along with your rails and so forth. So all those elements that we've talked about and the need to coordinate and focus is what I hope to see. And I think we're in an interesting opportunity and time in Canada because we're seeing that momentum, right? And Allison, you talked about the innovation, and you are correct that there's great ideas in Canada, but if we can do a better job of coordinating them, bringing some more processing and transformation in Canada for that value add, I think that can make a big difference. And before I pass it on to Allison, if I may, Evan, I want to maybe give an example to the audience, right, in terms of the potential of what we can do in Canada. So there's a company out of Quebec called Ideal Can, and they're I think one of the only can producing manufacturers in Canada, or one of the remaining that exist. Well, a few years back, through some support with FCC, we actually helped them add a production line. So in the last 3 years, and a lot of us know, right, that so much of our processing's gone down to the US. In the last 3 years, they've tripled their revenues. They're in the process probably of expanding their production line yet again. And, I was just in Vancouver last week talking to a food and beverage audience, and I said, you're probably at this point wondering, yeah, Justine, why should I care about that? Well, you should care about it because the aluminum can you can buy in Canada is 20% cheaper than the can that you need to import from the US. So that's one thing, it's not bad of a deal. But when you're in this food and beverage business, your packaging can represent almost 40% of your cost. So then you start to see the difference that it can make. So if we can have some of those Ideal Can success stories, right, that are Canadian made, and it goes right back to how we started this conversation, right, about sovereignty and security and being able to do things at home and to feed yourself with what it involves and then to be able to feed the world. That's, Evan, what I think would be really nice to see in that strategy.
Love it. Allison?
So I'm going to incorporate a couple thoughts here. First off, I've been a very proud member of Canadian Council of Innovators for 10 years. Since they started. I just had to put a shout out to John. One of the things why I became a member is I read an article about, back in, I think it was 2015, 2016, read an article that said, can Canada compete to win? And at the bottom was the contact number for the Canadian Council of Innovators. And this article was written by Jim Balsillie, former RIM. And I looked at it and I went, okay, I contacted it. I never do that. So I contacted him and said, you're speaking to me. And it was all about opportunity. It was all about competition. And I had the immense pride of serving with Dominic Barton on the 2017 economic strategy tables. I sat on the agri-food. My business partner now today, Judy Fairburn, sat on energy. And it felt like we were doing something amazing. We were going to change the world. And that was a phenomenal report. And despite years of innovation agendas, despite many things, I was so proud to be a Canadian when I heard the Prime Minister in Davos. But I've always been a proud Canadian. But the one other thing that I want to say is that let's take this time and let's execute. I think from my perspective, the thing that I want out of this strategy is I want execution. I want us to seize our opportunity.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great moment when we, oh yes. Let's just, in the last few minutes that we've got remaining, jump to a much more granular level. I mean, Alison, you and I have talked a lot about the role of precision fermentation, this idea that we can train microbes to produce valuable proteins for us as a whole new sort of type of innovation that we really haven't embedded in our food system at a meaningful scale. There's a few examples, but whatnot. I mean, using that as sort of maybe a bit of inspiration, what can you share with the audience sort of a specific innovation that you're excited about that could be sort of something people can take away as something tangible and concrete that gives you optimism that we are indeed on the right path? And maybe you want to go with precision fermentation because you were hanging out with a bunch of precision fermenters just last week.
Yes. So precision fermentation is basically taking strains, microbiological strains, and doing what we do with beer. So if you like beer, you understand the concept. There's just a little bit more that comes on the front end. It's a huge opportunity. It's not a replacement, and this is why I always get quite upset when people call them alternative proteins. It's just a novel protein. It's a new way to create and develop protein. And many of us as investors are investing in precision fermentation companies, and then we have to send them away in order for them to scale. They can prove it to a certain point in Canada, then they must go elsewhere. So I'm really focused and really joined by others in this room on can we have these types of processing and bioeconomic centers to scale so that scale occurs in Canada. And the one thing, I'm not looking to the government to invest in this. I'm looking for us to cash flow this as a true infrastructure project. And if we do get things to cash flow, and if we do make it for real, then we will have increased our industry. So very much like the Dutch experience, I want government, but I also want industry, and I want really smart capital people that understand what it takes to walk this journey. And I think if we get that together, man, are we gonna have a successful country.
And maybe on that, I want to maybe add some numbers to give a sense to the audience. So when you look at on the primary agriculture side, I'll say in the 90s when we were increasing our production on average about 2% per year. And what we were referring to in the introduction is we continue to increase our productivity, but at a slower pace than we did, right? So right now we're at 0.9%. And so what we're saying is, what if we went back to 2%, right? We just get that back up. This is something like $30 billion worth, so lots of dollars and cents towards our GDP. I think it's something like 26,000 jobs. So then we get to the food side. So the top productivity, or if we were able to bring food productivity back up to 3%, you're talking about 41 billion in GDP and 217,000 jobs. So add the two together, so it could be precision fermentation or different innovations. The message here is the potential, right? And in many cases, we were there before, and we've kind of lost a bit of steam, if I may say it that way. And now's our opportunity to really be able to gain that back. But the potential is real. The dollars the impact are substantial, right? So I think that's what we're really trying to articulate to this audience and those folks that are online.
Folks, I think we are at time. I am just going to wrap up by quickly saying I truly believe that Canada is at a unique moment in terms of global food security. We have the potential to increase our economic importance of this vital sector of the economy. In doing so, we can export food, and by exporting food, we can export stability and security around the world. We can strengthen our supply chains and reduce our vulnerability. And if we are committed to the full idea of food insecurity, we can also build the sort of society that ensures that every Canadian can afford a dignified and healthy diet. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have spent the last 25 minutes with these two amazing people on the stage, and would just like to invite everyone to a round of applause to say thank you to them and the organizers.
Justine, Allison, Evan, thank you so much for your insight and reminder that Canada's agriculture and food sector is not only an economic driver, but also central to our resilience and our place on the world stage. Thank you. Thank you as well to our sponsors, the Errol Foundation and Deloitte, for making today's event possible. A special thanks to Yuan Shui and the team at Naya Ventures for bringing this conversation to Canada's podium. And thank you to our production partner, VVC Live, for their consistently outstanding support. Before we conclude, I'd like to highlight a few upcoming Canadian Club events as we head to the end of our 129th season. On June 8th, we host our 9th annual Pride event discussing the evolution of LGBTQ+ stories on screen. On June 15th, we welcome Canada's ambassador to the United States alongside Daryl White, CEO of BMO, for a timely conversation on Canada-US relations and economic leadership. And on June 16th, we'll close our season with a discussion featuring CIOs from Canada and the United States on the current landscape of investment challenges and opportunities. Please visit canadianclub.org for more information on these and other content. Members and guests, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful afternoon.